Good afternoon and welcome here in London, Rabbi Sachs's home here in London, and wherever you're watching us today across the world, welcome to what should be a fascinating and interesting discussion. We are delighted here in Mizrahi UK to be facilitating, bringing together two of the Jewish world's global educators, Rabbi Jonathan Sachs and Sivan Rahav-Meir. And certainly, Sivan, welcome to the UK. I know you just arrived literally a few hours ago. And the next 7 days, I think it's 3 cities, 7 schools, 10 communities, thousands of people to spread Torah and spread in this beautiful time of Rosh Hashanah. And of course, if you have any questions you want to add to this discussion, please do just add it in the page beneath, and we'll try and take as many questions as we can. But let's get started. There's a lot to get through. And we're going to start, I guess, with Rosh Hashanah. And I think one of the most important questions people want to know is, and I'll start with you, Rabbi Sachs, what for you personally is the most meaningful or powerful moment over the Yom Noa'im, and why?
Well, I think there's a beginning and ending powerful moment. The start of it all is the sound of the shofar. It's an extraordinary thing that something that wordless and that basic, an animal horn, it's not a sort of trumpet or a metal instrument, something that basic can have echoed through so many key moments of Jewish history. So that was the sound the Israelites heard as they stood at the foot of Mount Sinai and made a covenant with God. That was the sound they heard when they conquered Jericho. It was the sound they heard every Jubilee year when liberty was proclaimed throughout the land. It's the sound, tragically, but still defiantly, that we sound when we go and visit Auschwitz and remember, you know, what happened to our people when they were powerless, facing this ultimate hate. And the sound of the shofar says, we're still here. You did not defeat us. And somehow or other, the sound of the shofar, to me, is what's so fundamental about Judaism. It's simple, it's basic. And we each invest it with our own set of meanings. And yet it unites us across countries and across times. So I think, you know, if I were to identify one moment, that would be the moment when you're standing in shul, wherever you are in the world, and somehow you're in some kind of communion with the Jews of all previous generations and the Jews throughout the world who are sounding the shofar likewise.
Wow. Sivan.
Yeah, first of all, thank you. Thank you, Rabbi Sachs, Baal Habayit, Amara De'atra, Baal Habayit. Thank you for hosting us. It's a zchut, kavod, from privilege, toda. I'm sure these are only some of the books in this house. We're just in one room, so thank you. That's the place where all the content comes from. That's really impressive. Okay. And thank you, Rabbi Shao, for really inventing this format of this journey in London, in the UK for this week. I'm really excited to be here to meet the community. Very special. My answer is, maybe this year, I think every time you see in the Siddur how imperfect we are, it really touches me. Because of the last year in Israel was really hard. I know you plan to ask about the elections, but I can't ignore the fact we, the Meir family, my kids just told me, we went to vote 4 times this year. First time, Jerusalem municipality, Iriya, to choose our mayor. Second time, because of the results there, we had to go again, because nobody achieved like 40% because of the system. So 2 campaigns. Just think of a kid in Jerusalem.
For the mayors.
Only for the mayors. And then general elections in Israel, as you all know. And then round 2, and maybe even round 3. My kid asked me a few days ago, Mommy, I know we're the only democracy in the Middle East, but aren't we a little bit exaggerating? So I think we are a little bit exaggerating. And
Israel is a hyper-democracy.
Yeah, hyper-democracy. I like it, yeah. So I think and all these campaigns, all these slogans, the atmosphere, they all say, I'm perfect, I'm the best, you're the worst. It's only me, you're awful, I'm perfect. And I think the process now, during Elul and during Tishrei, is exactly the opposite. It's so important to us, to our soul, to understand these slogans. It's not true. Every time I see now, during Slichot, when we say, Kedalim ucherashim dafaknu delatecha, as paupers and as beggars, we knock on your door. We're beggars. We're imperfect. We're not as strong as we think. Every time I see in the Siddur, we're a little bit broken, that's my slogan this year. I mean, after hearing all these campaigns, I think that's the right campaign to all of us. We're not perfect.
Not just Israel, these things are happening. I think other countries.
I've heard something going on here in the UK.
England's quiet, nothing really happening here. It's a very quiet political scene here in the UK. And we received a lovely question from a 12-year-old, and I think it's so important that we, children's questions sometimes can really enlighten us. And I'll just read this question to both of you. The question is, how does teshuvah work as a process? If you can sin all year, knowing that come Elul, Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, you can just teshuvah and be forgiven, how is this different from the Christian concept of sin and confession to achieve forgiveness? For a 12-year-old?
Well, this is a terrific question. It's a brilliant question, answered by the Mishnah, because the Mishnah tells us that Ha'omer echteve ashuv, Yom Kippur is not mechaver. Somebody who says, I will sin, and then I will do tshuva for the sin, is not atoned for. And so it doesn't work. Sorry, whoever asked the question, sorry, it really doesn't work.
I'm asking how does it work, so that's not how it works.
Roughly speaking, this is not precisely what the sages meant, but they gave this beautiful phrase of hatovel v'sheretz biyado. If you immerse yourself in a mikveh, but you're still holding on to the source of impurity. So, if you are committed to sin and you say, I'm going to repent for it, you don't really repent. That urge, the sin is still really there, and so you didn't really mean it. So it just doesn't work. The truth is, and it's a sad truth, that we can fool lots of people. The person we most readily fool is ourselves. But we really can't fool HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So he knows if we are genuinely sorry that we did what we did, or whether we're just going through the formalities, and it just doesn't work.
I mean, teshuvah, I guess, in the world you're in terms of the media, in terms of politicians, there's always that discussion about, people who've done something wrong and they do teshuvah. How does that work kind of in Israel and in the political sphere? Do people find it difficult to kind of, I think we were speaking before about how nowadays no one can do teshuvah because it's out there for people to see. And how does that work maybe in sort of the media world?
I think it's a completely different concept than what we see in our daily life, because Rabbi Zaks, when we came here and you just told us about the pre-slichot Sicha you had here in London, you said we have no rachamim, no mercy in the, let's say, the public sphere. I think
we are unforgiving.
Exactly, everything you post for the rest of your life. Somewhere you'll take a picture of the screen, even if you want to erase it, there is no tshuva. It's out there. Everything you say as a politician, as a journalist, as a singer, as a figure, as a celebrity, nothing. The archive always remembers, and it's really hard. So Hashem really offers us a concept that is a divine concept. It can't be erased up there. It's hard to erase things down here. It's easy to change things up there. And now someone just told me before we started this shidur, this like broadcasting live, someone just wrote, look at you three. I mean, the three people that are sitting here, I think you both are, I don't know about myself, but you two are definitely the Rabbanim here. That's the perfect example of tshuva, of the, let's say, the ability to change, to choose your own path in life. I'll just say, Rabbi Shaw, you were brought up here in London, not as a dati teenager, maybe Masorti Jewish, but not traditional. Traditional. And if I remember correctly, remember the fascinating story, Rabbi Zak, how you met the Dubavishur Rebbe, and he changed your life. You were also Chiloni, Masorti, secular, traditional, I don't know, but I also come from a not observant house in Israel. Great parents, great family, not not dati. So just look at it's possible to change, to reconnect to your Judaism. It's looking at you two, it makes me optimistic. I mean, it's possible.
I can thank Bnei Akiva for my part of
Bnei
my
Akiva?
journey.
So Bnei Akiva and Lubavitcher Rebbe and.
But I mean, you look at our heroes, Yehuda, whose name we carry because we are Yehudim. Yehuda was the man who sold his brother as a slave. He did tshuva, aval Hashem imanachnu, he said clearly, Elokim matzah et avon avadecha. he candidly admits he's sinned, then he changes to the opposite extreme and says to the man he doesn't know is his brother Yosef, let me stay as a slave and let my brother Binyamin go free. So Yehuda committed one of the worst sins ever, and yet did tshuva and became the person whose name we carry. David HaMelech, a similar story, 10 generations on. So the Tanakh tells us such stories, and they're very powerful stories because, as you say, they're very optimistic. However low we have sunk, we can climb out of that pit, and we can climb to the heights.
Staying on Rosh Hashanah, another interesting question, and maybe this is more for you, Sivan. We've got to ask this question. I'm a mum, I mean I'm not, but the question is, I'm a mother of 4 young kids and absolutely love davening on Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur. Please share some thoughts to help balance davening on the one hand and entertaining and inspiring my kids on the other. Many thanks for Shana Tova. So it's, as I said,
yeah.
Again, as I said, definitely Rabbi Sachs again.
No.
But I think Sivan
wow. It's I think I sent the question to myself. I mean, that's the only. I have 5 kids and she has 4 maybe, but it's my way. I think that's really these are real life questions. I mean, we're facing. It's not only philosophical concepts. That's the real issues. I think the most spiritual tefillot are the prayers when mothers daven with the kid that is interrupting. They always come when you start Amidah, when you start Shmona Esrei. They have this system. You start Psukei Tazim right, it's okay, la la la, Shema Yisrael, then you stand, they come. And so first of all, my advice, like a piece of advice, a tip, they grow up. Well, I mean, they grow up. I have 5 kids. Eventually. The little one still comes during Amidah. I'll tell you something. The girl, my girl, she's 13. She goes to the shul sometimes. She doesn't come in the middle. They grow up. They become more mature. These are hard years. Raising up small kids today takes, I think, we need the hardest midah today is patient because everything is so fast and accessible and available. So even like pregnancy, 9 months, that's like, for nowadays, that's a like lifetime. Yeah, lifetime, that's eternity. So basically, but I don't want to just tell her at the end of the day, it passed. Take advantage of these special times when you have the time to be with them. For years, I didn't go to shul, Shabbos morning, even today. Sometimes I'm with my kids. And it's also holy to understand that what we do at home, what in the inner place, I mean, Daled Amot, it's also holy. That's something I didn't, as a young mother, I'm 38 today, but when I was like in my 20s, I didn't get it. And now I start really realizing that what I do out there is, at the end of the day, it's important. But it's not the real test. I mean, it's good, you get all these, likes, feedback, response, everything when you're out there. What you do in there, that's the real challenge, that's the real test. And that's really holy. Don't feel like it's b'di'evet. That's the chatchila. Now you're with the kids. Find the time with your husband. Of course, he's part of the system. Find the right time. But I think that's the conflict. That's the thing. Don't run away. You be there.
Embrace it.
Yeah.
I know, Rabbi Sachs, you've spoken many times about the importance, as Sivan was saying, of that home environment, of what is happening. I mean, obviously, Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur, we go to shul. But there's also the aspect that we're not a shul-based religion, we're a home-based religion. And how that balance we've got to find in terms of those 2 areas of both going to shul and obviously having the strong identities at home.
I think to myself, what led me in one particular direction, the road of tshuva. And that is the simple fact that my parents, Aleichem Shalom, although they didn't know very much, loved Judaism. They just loved it. Whenever my father felt Jewish, I saw him stand an inch taller. And, he loved going to shul. He loved, whatever was Jewish gave them pride. And I think that is the biggest thing they gave me and my 3 brothers, that sense of Jewish identity and Jewish practice being a privilege, being a real zuchut, a kavod. So I've always known, we for 22 years I was chief rabbi of this community, and we really focused on building Jewish day schools, and we built a lot of Jewish day schools. but I always knew that the biggest single influence on how children develop is home. It's not school. School is right up there at number 2, but it's not number 1. So all the love for, somebody asked me, how can I make sure my children, what do I have to say to my children to make sure they don't marry out? And I said, don't say anything. Just let them see that you love everything about being Jewish. And that is, I think, the most powerful example. And, I remember just watching my dad davening, just watching your parents in tefillah. That itself is something very beautiful. And for your children to see that there's certain things that are really holy, it's something they don't see very much in the culture outside.
This is true. This is definitely true. I think we'll move away from Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur and focus on, I guess, the big questions that are happening in the Jewish world, and obviously Rosh Hashanah is linked to that, of course. But I'm going to read to you an opening passage from a recently published book called #Israeli Judaism, which I think we all discussed before, the one we're going to discuss later on, how technology is really shaping our lives. It's by Shmuel Rosner, Kamal Fuchs, and the Jewish People's Policy Institute, and they say the following thing. I'll read it to you, and I want to get your comments on this. It says, Zionism was a political movement with political objectives. Zionism was a spiritual movement with spiritual objectives. Zionism sought to rescue the Jews from a bitter fate, persecution, anti-Semitism, and assimilation. It sought to rescue Judaism from a bitter fate, exhaustion, paralysis, insignificance, and irrelevance. To what extent do you agree with that opening statement, and where are we today in terms of the Zionist movement? Where are we going to be in the next 10, 20 years? I know it's quite a wide-ranging question, but I think it goes to the heart of Israel and probably diaspora as well, how we relate to Israel, what Israel means to us, and where we're going as a nation. So I think we'll start with you, Sivan. How does that make you those statements?
First of all, I see it now as a Mizrahi Shlicha this year in the States. In Israel, you sure everyone are convinced, Baruch Hashem, Zionism already, there's no dispute. There is a dispute. You still have to explain the basic fact. The Jewish people came back to their homeland. They have the justification of the case, just talking about Jerusalem. Even the discussion, sometimes we think the discussion is 67, the 6 Days War. Sometimes we have to argue, even to talk about 48, Independence War, the legitimacy, even the case for Israel. So, first of all, we still have this issue. You see BDS, you see here in Britain, you see all kinds of trends and things that are taking place. So anyway, I think we still have to work on the basic recognition of the basic Zionist movement. But of course it's not enough. And the next level, we can't ignore the fact that after building a house, you have to put things in it. You have to have content, inner content. And that is the question. What is the spiritual, cultural content of our state? 71 is a good age to start thinking about what's going on with us. And do we have a unique message to the world? Or we just copy-paste what's going on in, let's say, the West, the liberal West? Do we copy-paste? Sometimes people accuse me as an Orthodox woman. Oh, you want Tehran, you want Iran. You and Rouhani are like best friends. You just want another version, a Jewish version of Tehran. That's not right. I think most Orthodox Jews do not want such a thing, but we do not want to, have this, to be another state of the United States. So what do we want? That's the main question. What do you mean a Jewish state, Jewish culture, Jewish vision? I think that's the issue today, and that's the next challenge Zionism is facing.
Both in Israel and diaspora.
Of course, all of us.
Both. Just before we carry on, obviously, if this area now, if any questions you want on this area about Israel diaspora relations and what we're talking about, please do just put your questions in, and hopefully I'll get them and be able to ask them.
Is it working, by the way? Yeah.
We're getting questions.
Yeah,
we're getting
questions. We have David Rubin here, with Joanna, with Dan. There's a whole staff working.
Oh, this studio is.
Yeah, studio behind the scenes. Thank you. Everything's working. Baruch Hashem, you're great. Okay.
Rabbi Sachs.
The most fundamental thing was really not fully put to the fore by any of the great Zionist thinkers. I mean, people thought of Israel across a whole range: Bialik, Berdyshevsky, Aleph Dalet Gordon, Rav Kuxel, and all the rest of them. each had their own particular vision of Zion. And yet the simplest vision of the lot, the one on which the Torah is based, is that the Torah is the constitution of a society. I mean, you don't expect a religious document to look like the Torah. You don't, I mean, most religious literatures are about the welfare of the soul and finding grace and salvation, whereas the Torah is about how you run an economy, how you run an agriculture, how you run a welfare system, what you do with the widow, the orphan, and the stranger within your gates, etc., etc. The Zionism obviously had this very physical dimension, which was totally necessary. Jews had nowhere that they could call home in the Robert Frost sense, as the place where when you have to go there, they have to let you in. And that was shown during the Shoah with the most tragic consequences. At the same time, Achad Ha'am, who had this cultural Zionism or Ruchani Zionism, was clearly mistaken in thinking all you needed was this spiritual regeneration that could then spread to the rest of the world. One way or another, you need to bring those two strands together. And they haven't quite come together. The end result is that people don't realize how great and how Jewish Israel actually is. So, when I look at all the bad things that happen, Rahman al-Islam, all the suicide bombings after 2002, what does Israel do? They become the world's experts in rapid response, in post-traumatic stress disorder. Along come all the missiles. They come along and invent Iron Dome. You throw anything at Israel, and it has this capacity of turning a klala, a curse, into a bracha, a blessing. And they then go and sell it to the rest of the world. This is astonishing. I mean, absolutely incredible.
We have traffic jams, we invent Waze, everything.
Waze, to my mind, is the most ruchni invention ever.
Wow.
Because it did more for Shalom Bayit than anything. You know how many marriages fell apart because he said to her, why didn't you read the map? And she said to him, why didn't you stop and ask for instructions? Marriages fell apart over this. Waze came along and created Shalom Bayit. So, one way or another, Israel finds solutions to the world's problems. The second thing it does, magnificently, is uvacharta v'chaim. To sanctify life by developing medical technologies, nanotechnologies, life-enhancing things. You have a quadriplegic in Israel. So what does he do? He invents the exoskeleton, something that for the first time in history allows quadriplegics to walk. One way or another, this is affirming life the whole time through. Now, if you could communicate some of this, secular Israelis would not feel so secular. They would suddenly understand, hey, I can relate to that. Actually, that's what I'm about. I've often said that secular Israelis are the only people who truly believe that secular Israelis are secular. Hey, maminim b'nei maminim. They're really deeply believing, except that nobody reached out.
By the way, I'll add to these beautiful facts the demographic numbers about birth in Israel, about we're the only place where it's not declining. Democracy, Western democracy, that really believes in life, bringing the next generation into this world. You know what's going on in Europe when it comes to the percentage of. So you also see it in Israel, the positive.
In Europe, there is not one country out of the 27 that has even a zero population growth, which is 2.1. They range from Britain at 1.8 to Germany and Spain 1.3, Italy 1.3. And to have a child in Israel after the Shoah, that is like Job in the book that bears his name. In the last chapter, he has more children.
Yeah.
People think Hashem is giving back the children that he lost. No, that's not the point of the last chapter. The point is that after everything that Job went through, he had the courage to have children again. And we heard this story about Mrs. Ovitz, a Holocaust survivor, 104 years old, with 400 direct descendants. That is choosing life. So I think if people could only see the spirituality of secularity in Israel, you would begin to bring these worlds together and let not only Jews but the world see that Israel is actually different. And then you would immediately see some of the issues that need addressing, like the education system in Israel. I mean, we predicated our very existence on education. Israel should be spending a higher percentage of its GDP on education than any country in the world, and it isn't right now. And you begin to address problems of poverty because, you know, that's a serious issue for the Torah. So if you could do these things, Zionism would have a new lease of life, Israel would have a better image in the diaspora, and Dati and Chiloni Jews in Israel would come closer to one another.
I'm taking this message back with me to Israel. I'll tell them. I'll translate into Hebrew. Beautiful. Now, how spiritual. Sometimes you should look, you know, from abroad. You see how good we are, how spiritual and good we are. Because we're in the middle of, you know, trying to form a coalition. So you don't always remember that.
So I apologise for bringing down from that beautiful level down to the reality of Israel today, which of course you just mentioned, Sivan, which of course we've had another election.
Yeah.
Hopefully the last one for a while, but we don't know. There seems to be division in Israel in terms of...
What do you say? There seems to be a division. That's a British way
to
describe us.
Again, and then when I looked to here in the UK, again, we seem to have a little bit of division, and the same in America. It seems to be a real polarization of views and ideas. You know, obviously I'm not asking who's the next Israeli government, because I don't think anyone knows. But in terms of how are you seeing, I guess, as a broadcaster and you, Rabbi Sachs, as a spiritual leader, what is happening in the world, why it's happening, and what can we do as Jews, specifically maybe as humanity, to kind of realize why is this happening, why is this polarization happening, and what can be done about it?
Okay, I want to tell you two positive things about these elections. Although, you know, usually I interview the people, anyway, that's my job, usually I'm the journalist, and I'm on your side. So someone says, I just want to say only two things. I'm like, no, choose one, because it won't be long. But two great things that we learned this month. First thing, we can't do it alone. I mean, all these sectors and fragments and parts in our diverse society, nobody can do it by himself. They all thought they can do it. I mean, see the campaigns. Only Netanyahu. I don't want guns. The left, they are... And Gantz, only me. I don't need Netanyahu. Listen to me. I'm sorry. But nobody. Lieberman, I can't sit with the Haredim. I really hate it. There were awful campaigns about the religious Zionism, about the Haredim. I banned them. They're extreme. They're crazy. Also, the Arabs were not willing to sit with you. They will not sit with them. Now, the final result, you see the numbers. The people of Israel said something here. Nobody won the elections. Nobody. I mean, it's a mutual, we'll say, failure. But this failure means something. We can't do it by ourselves. We need each other. We need each other's assistance. We need each other's help. We need Hashem's help, by the way. But that's the first positive message I get here. Don't be too, kochi v'otzim yadi. It's only me. It's not only you, but it's not only you. We said something here to our leaders. We all voted and said to them, you must do it together. Otherwise, nobody will be the leader here. Second positive things. I come from the States. As I said, I'm only there for a month. But there's something there that is too sensitive. Everywhere when I speak, people come and say, someone in Atlanta, some woman told me before I start talking, she said, just don't mention the T word. I'm like, the T word, tshuva, Torah. Yeah. And she whispers, Trump. Yeah, Trump. Like it's Hashem HaMeforash, you don't even mention him. And she said, it's too sensitive here. The Jews, it's too sensitive. Okay, I didn't mention Trump. But in Israel, nobody will come and tell me, don't mention the B word, Bibi. Yes, we talk about things. I think the situation there is not so healthy. If you can't discuss things, it's really, you're not, maybe this nation is really divided. It's not my, it's not my issue, but I see the people there. They are really, and in Israel, we can still argue, and it's important. We talk, we shout, we discuss things, we have conflicts, we have conflicts and disputes, but we still, we're part of the same family, and that we talk about the things. Although we have our, machlokot, we're still part of the same, nation. That's how I feel.
Rabbi Sachs, in terms of the polarization, I know you've written a lot about this in terms of what's happening in the world today, both here, America, and I guess in a different way in Israel. I think it's different in Israel than it's happening maybe in the Western world, but sort of ideas and thoughts on this area.
You have to establish commonalities as well as differences. For me, the Seder table, it's not very Rosh Hashanah sort of thing. Maybe the lulav and etrog is the best example, you know. The Seder table, you have a chacham, a rosh, a tam, a sheni, a delishol. Yeah, they're completely different, but they're sitting at the same table telling the same story. You have the lulav and etrog and adasim and aravot, all representing 4 different kinds of Jew, but you hold them together into aguda achat, you know, into one group. And that becomes terribly important. I remember on a very, very sad occasion, I flew to the funeral of Yitzhak Rabin, and I flew with the Prime Minister, John Major, with the head leader of the opposition, Tony Blair, and the leader of the third party, Paddy Ashdown. And normally a flight from London to Ben Gurion takes 4.5 hours, but on the Queen's plane it takes 8.5 hours. It's a very old plane. So we're just sitting together, you know, the 4 of us for 8.5 hours, and talking like friends, like real friends. John Major was being very, very open with the other 2, telling them things he would never normally tell, you know, because there used to be this English thing called dining with the opposition. Okay, in public you can be opponents, but privately at night you have a l'chaim together or you have a meal together, and you realize that your opponent is also a human being with a life story, with a life, you know. So we've lost a little of that, and that's seriously bad news. I had to speak in America the Shabbat after the 2016 presidential election.
Oh.
On Shabbat in a shul where I suspect that 98% of the congregation had voted in one direction. The next day I had to address a conference of Jewish organizations where I suspect 98% voted the other way. So, you know, I had to somehow or other...
Did you say the T word or you didn't say it?
I didn't say any word anywhere near the T word. What I was trying to do was to build a connection across a divide. And you just do that. I mean, you just do that by focusing very hard on the other person. Vaya Elokim ki tov. And you see something good in the other person. And somehow you communicate that you have seen that something good in the other person. Immediately they begin to open up. And then you can talk much more constructively. And I don't think anyone practices this art anymore. But it's not a difficult art. It's a very, very important art. I explained when I did TED 2.5 years ago, I was just trying to explain to them how I immediately knew when I met Elaine that this was the person I had to marry. And I knew it because she was happy. She was exactly the opposite of me. You know, I was miserable and existential angst and all the rest of it. And I suddenly realized that it's the people not like you who make you grow.
Wow. That's for zugiyut, for
Yeah.
marriage. That's a good,
It was
good tip. You do not have to be similar. Yeah.
This year we celebrate our 50th wedding anniversary, so it seems to have worked so far.
But you're not so miserable, Baruch Hashem.
Of course not.
Already, no.
You marry somebody who's happy, and then you change. But I do think we need to learn that art of working together across divides, because it's not good for politics, it's not good for peoplehood, it's really bad news.
I mean, you mentioned the plane. Trump has a plane. Maybe he could fly all the different leaders on his plane for 8 hours, and maybe we could solve all his problems that way. Those long plane journeys might be. Just before we leave Israel, I want just one question, which again, I guess to lift it up a bit as well, in terms of, you know, same way we were asked about Rosh Hashanah, one experience that's inspired you. What about Israel? An experience that inspired you about the state of Israel, Medinat Israel, that you want to share? I just think it's people want to hear what your inspiration about Israel. So
I'm surprised to see how connected you are here in Britain and in the US, and how people are connected. Anyone in the States now asks me, where are you from? Where do you live in Israel? So I say, Yerushalayim. But more than 90% ask, where in Yerushalayim? And I like it. They're involved. It's not like a vague, concept, like the concept of Jerusalem. It's the real Jerusalem, the tachlis, the practical, the real, and this neighborhood, the other neighborhood. They want to be connected. Sometimes they are more excited than me as an Israeli. I'm seventh generation in Israel. My great-great-parents came during the first Aliyah, the first pioneers. They established the city of Rishon LeZion. Sometimes it makes us, just like Rabbi Zaks mentioned earlier, sometimes we, the Tzabarim, it's obvious. It's muvan me'elav. It becomes banal. It becomes like not exciting. Coming sometimes to see you, how you see us, so connected. So, you see the walls and all the schools in America, I see. They hang pictures. They're like maybe we would, the Israelis would say they're naive, they're innocent, they're tamim. Yeah, they're Americans. I like this trimut. You need to export I like it. You can teach us what's so special about our state.
The pride we have in Israel.
The pride you have. Right. The interest. You're so interested. You live it. I mean, really. I see. Really, for me, it's a new thing for me to know how I meet brothers and sisters for the first time in my life, but I really feel so close, and they feel so close. I feel it for the first time. I was really concentrated in Israel. I knew nothing about world Jews, and now for me, meeting this, it's great.
Okay, so that's the kind of the inside out, or the outside in, sort of as a diaspora Jew, and sort of what your experience of Israel in terms of inspiring for you.
As far as I'm concerned, Israel is where Judaism makes sense. You take Sukkot. You celebrate Sukkot in London with the cold and the wet and the rain and the wind, and you call that Zman Simchatenu. And then you go to Israel and you see what it is, what it's like, and you suddenly say, now I understand. You go to Tikkun Leil Shavuot in Chutz La'aretz. Yeah, so you've finished, and you're daven about 3:30 in the morning, 5 o'clock in the morning, you walk back, and you think, what am I doing? You go to the Kotel.
Wow. Yeah.
And you see the groups streaming in from all sections of Yerushalayim, and you know perfectly well that even though that's the Kotel, it's the wrong side of the wall, as it were, but that's what it felt like, Bizman Beit HaMikdash Haya Kaim. And you think to yourself, this is what Shavuot is all about. This is Kabbalat HaTorah. Everything makes sense in Israel. And in Chutz La'aretz, it's Ramban says this, that Ikar Kol HaMitzvot Yoshvim Beretz Hashem. Everything makes sense in Israel.
But I must ask, because, so the conclusion is, okay, let's just tell people, make Aliyah. That's the only way of being a real Jew today. And we know the majority of the American Jews will not make Aliyah tomorrow morning, okay? Even if I will be a great shlicha for the Mizrahi movement, I don't see 6 million Jews, not even here in Britain. So what is your answer to those who say, yeah, it's okay, it makes sense there. It makes sense here too. What are the options for these Jews? That's the majority of the Jews today.
The truth is, as Isaiah said, tzav l'tzav, kav l'kav, little by little. Don't expect it to happen immediately. Even kibush haaretz in the time of Yehoshua was not instantaneous. Great movements take time. Already something that anyone would have said would have been impossible just a few decades ago, that Israel should have the largest Jewish population in the world, more than in the United States, that's already happened. Major aliyot from former Soviet Union, from France today. America is getting very worried about the growth of anti-Semitism. British Jewry is, all of Europe is. And I simply wonder if, Herzl were to come back to life and see what he created, what he set in motion. I don't know if he'd have made any sense of it at all. He didn't think in quite such dramatic terms. So I think everything is going to plan. But in the meanwhile, we use technology like this to abolish distances, and we manage to abolish some of the dimension of galut, and some of the, other distances between Jews in Israel and Jews in Chutz La'aretz. I think it's on schedule, and I think it's happening even faster than anyone could have imagined.
Okay. Going to move on to another area, which is more, I guess, about Judaism and other areas to do with that. And I've got an interesting question just came in. I'll read it to you. It says, just to both of you, would you say that wellness and mindfulness are useful additions to the philosophy of Judaism? Which I guess they're saying that these are new things that have come into the Western psyche. Would you say they're already incorporated within the teachings of the Torah? So,
I just read a fascinating new book called Mu'adim L'Sicha. Maybe you've heard of it. No, okay. I really recommend to everybody who can read it in Hebrew. Beautiful book. Koren Magid just published it in Israel. Talks by Rabbi Zaks through the Chagim. You have a great translator in Hebrew.
Oh, I see.
Sur Ehrlich. Yeah, mamash.
Tzor is brilliant. Absolutely brilliant.
Because translating means also, really...
If Tzor is watching in or listening in, I want to say Kol HaKavod, Tzor. You're incredibly good.
He's busy with your next book, maybe, I don't know. But anyway, mamash, he takes your spirit. It's not easy to really translate the spirit. So I just read something about about Sukkot there. That's maybe a spoiler, because I looked over. And what Rabbi Isaac says about... living in a society of wealth, that's something you write, I think, in many places. Also about this book, the fifth Chumash we read, Sefer Dvarim. That living in a society of wealth, that's also a great challenge. Living with prosperity and with, Western world, developing, flourishing, good, positive world. You wrote that a society that faces a crisis, okay, it's hard, but it's maybe harder when the society is not facing any crisis. I really liked it because today everything is so convenient and nice and cozy and available and accessible, and that's even the hardest. Maybe that's the hardest thing, to be a proud, active Jew nowadays, when you have it all, and you really have it all. In Israel, Baruch Hashem, in America, I was just here in Golders Green. It was hard to choose the kosher restaurant. Maybe you have recommendations, but it was hard to choose.
We chose a good one.
We chose a good one. Okay, but my great-parents, they suffered they were really hungry. They were really thirsty. We're not really hungry. We're not really thirsty. We're not praying to get one orange from Eretz Israel. We have it all. And being, Jews today, choosing Judaism today, I just quote, that's real heroism. That's real courage. That's real gvura. That's my idea from the new book.
Like Rabbi Sachs, you always said we survived exile, we survived freedom. It's the same idea.
Yeah, there was a singer whom I really didn't follow, and I didn't even think was Jewish, which will show how dumb I am, I'm afraid, called Neil Sedaka. A man whose name is Sedaka is probably Jewish. And he became very successful and very famous. And he wrote a song, I think, called I Miss the Hungry Years.
Wow.
When you're struggling to succeed, those are the vivid years. And there's something about Pesach, where we remember the lechem oni, the bread of affliction, the bitter herbs of slavery. There's something about Sukkot where we remember homelessness. And we don't forget the hungry years. Because if you forget the hungry years, you lose the drive, you lose everything that makes you creative. But I think, directly to address the question, is wellness and is mindfulness, are these Jewish concepts? The answer is 100%. You have to go and read chapter 4 of Hilchot Deot of the Rambam, where he says that being healthy is a positive mitzvah. And I think it's incredible how far we have come in increasing life expectancy. And much of that is to do with healthy lifestyle, exercising well, eating carefully, and all the rest of it. And that is an absolutely positive mitzvah, and the Rambam counts it as such and should be accepted as such, should be adopted as such. And most from people I know do take health seriously. They're personal trainers and they do I try and do my 10,000 steps a day, and we work at it. Mindfulness is another word for kavanah, and is a fundamental Jewish value. I mean, really, when we make a bracha of any kind, that should be an exercise in mindfulness. I would certainly recommend the teaching of mindfulness. You know, when you eat an apple, that's an apple. You make a bracha of an apple. You begin to think of an apple as something, a divine creation. I mean, that, you know, you eat it more mindfully, and you probably put on less weight.
By the way, someone texted me from Israel. You spoke about heroism and bravery. That's real bravery, coming to Rabbi Professor Lord Zach's house and talking with your English. So, yeah, I'm sorry.
Your English
I was
is a
studying
lot better
Shakespeare.
than my Ivrit.
Oh yeah, we can switch to Ivrit. But I tried to read Shakespeare and Churchill during the night, but sorry, that's the level.
You've done very, very well.
I tried.
Sivan, you've done very well.
I mean, I think another area of the world that's changed rapidly, of course, is technology. And obviously, we are busy getting messages on our phones to ask each other, which I think is part of it. And we're hearing a lot about the dangers of technology, of smartphones and screen addictions and sort of internet usage that's sort of unfiltered. But let's try and turn it around. What would you say, what should young people be doing with technology? What are the benefits? What should they be focusing on to use this incredible technology for the better? What are the areas, especially young people, but again, both Jewish and the community at large, in terms of the modern day Jew and the modern day person? What do you think? What are the areas?
No, Sivan, you're the expert. Well, we've just been following in your slipstream. You know.
Okay, no, but first of all, maybe there is some hypocrisy here, because when it comes to my kids, no smartphones. So maybe, you know, Mommy, you're on Facebook all day, you have this Instagram, you have millions of, Baruch Hashem, followers in all these social medias. What about us? But it's important to me to let them now live in a more close society. I think we're doing mistakes with nowadays kids, and for me, it's important. They're not weird. I mean, I send them to schools. I send them to school where they will not feel weird. No, there is no Instagram all day and Facebook all day, and kids do not upload pictures all day. I don't know what is the minimum, you know, the right age. Right. I think my age is too young. I don't know how my parents let me at the age of 38, and I see what it does to me. So maybe there is some hypocrisy here, because as I said, I support really letting kids grow. I don't know till when, but as much as I can, it's important for me. I see it affects them. I see it's a good thing, but I can't, you know, ignore the reality. Most of the humanity, of course, people in our age were there. It influences us. And what I discovered after our 5th child was born, Yehudit, maternity leave, you know, you have some time to think. I discovered something really fascinating. Rashi is not on Facebook. And a Rambam, he didn't upload a story for 800 years. And I was thinking to myself, I'm so concentrated, you know, I'm focused. That's where my mind is, you know, occupied with. I'm there. For news, for culture, entertainment, politics, finance, everything comes, you know, what can I do? Where's the Torah? I know the perfect situation is, of course, open a book and sit. But what will the people of the book do with the Facebook area? Right. And that's why I decided to try, you know, I'm a journalist, I'm not a Rebbetzin. I just posted one idea of Rashi. I remember it was a few years ago. And the surprising thing was to see it was the most popular post I ever had. I posted about, you know, I saw people are more interested in scoops about Sarah Imenu than scoops about Sarah Netanyahu. Now that's okay, so I decided to try, it's still, and I just started 2-3 years ago. I tried to bring these figures into our field and just make them be there. Of course, it's not a high level. I just want it to be accessible to people who do not sit and study. Maybe that's their yeshiva for the day. So that's this first stage. How can we use technology? But I'm sure Rabbi Zach has more profound ideas of this area.
Sivan, the truth is that I've been fascinated by this issue for some years because I asked myself the question, why did Hashem reveal himself to our people at the time that he did? Somebody had once asked me this question on television, and the question stayed with me. And I suddenly realized it had to do with information technology. That civilization began with the invention of writing, that Judaism began with the invention of the alphabet, that every invention in information technology had huge spiritual implications. The next one after the alphabet was ancient Greece, which became the first alphabet to have letters for vowels, which actually changed the way people read. It actually changed the direction of writing. Greek was originally written like Hebrew from right to left, and once they added the vowels, they moved it to left to right, and it energized the left hemisphere of the brain, and that led to all sorts of... Christianity was born with the invention of the Codex. The Reformation happened with the invention of printing. Nationalism happened with the invention of national newspapers, etc. So every single new information technology has dangers and great potential benefits. They're very disruptive. We are seeing right now a world being disrupted by smartphones and social media. You can be much ruder electronically than you can face to face. And if you wonder why politics has got so rude in Britain and America, it's the indirect consequence of smartphones. So when I saw the late Steve Jobs launch the iPad, I came in the next morning I was then chief rabbi, and I said, this is the face of the future. This is the game changer. Even though technologically it was just a great big iPhone, but nonetheless it was clear to me it was going to replace newspapers and magazines, and that was going to be big. That's when we began to get interested in this stuff. And what really made me very interested indeed, and very anxious indeed, was the rise first of Al-Qaeda and then of ISIS, expert users in YouTube videos. We even traveled to Palo Alto to meet with the people in Google to find out what they were doing to combat ISIS videos. And they were telling us how difficult it is for them to combat it, because every time they take down a site, there are 30,000 other sites that immediately rise up. So that was when I committed myself to saying that if we have to combat the spread of evil on the internet by using the internet to spread good. So they're very, very big issues here. But your caution, Sivan, is absolutely correct, because I did the research on this, and virtually every single major developer of these technologies stopped their kids from using it. Steve Jobs would not let his kids have an iPhone or an iPad. So
he knew something, He knew. How come Shabbat? I mean, because of this, really, we're so connected all the time, and everything becomes so superficial. And when I was a teenager, when we wanted to ask a philosophical question, we asked if a tree falls in the forest and nobody heard it, was there really a sound? Today you should ask, if two girls went to a mall and didn't upload a story, did they really went? I mean, did they really go there? I mean, it's so everything becomes so. How come Shabbat, which is, I think, the remedy, the cure, the solution? Sure. I mean, maybe it's our failure. I would expect Shabbat to become much more popular today. People to just disconnect. Do you see it? Maybe,
I see.
Maybe after the elections, I feel it becomes more and more.
Ariana Huffington of the Huffington Post has just embraced Shabbat as part of her Strive campaign. She isn't Jewish at all. I mean, Ariana Stasinopoulos, as she was once, is probably Greek Orthodox. So for her to embrace Shabbat is serious. Lots and lots of other people are doing so. They're talking about screen-free day. They're talking about digital detox. There is no question whatsoever that Shabbat is the perfect antidote. Gene Twenge of San Diego, of University of California, San Diego, who wrote the book iGen, which is the book on the current, what they call Gen Z in the States, the kids who grew up with this, with these social media, says that the best ration is an hour a day. But you use it much more than that, you will become very, very depressed. Because overexposure to social media, particularly for teenage girls, is very dangerous.
Girls,
specifically. Teenage girls. In Britain, 14-year-old girls, 1/4 of them say they have self-harmed, they have done something dangerous to themselves because they were depressed because of social media. 1/4 of 14-year-old girls.
Wow.
So that's serious.
Going to come to a close soon of our wonderful discussion here. So I want to ask you now, focusing back on Rosh Hashanah, which is in a few days' time. You'll be in Leeds, which we love.
Yeah.
They're looking forward to on your UK tour. But just, I guess, 1 minute thought on what you feel is the place we can make the most progress this next year. Where we should be focusing as Jews in terms of our areas of improvement. Where's the area in the 21st century today where you think the way the world is going that we should be focusing on today?
Maybe I'll start just because I want you to conclude, to summarize, to end. I think the Lubavitcher Rebbe, Rabbi Milubavitch, once said a beautiful sentence, influenced my life. I didn't have the zchut of meeting him like Rabbi Zach, but I read a lot of his, he left us a huge legacy. And I read a short sentence he once said to a bar mitzvah kid that came to get a bracha. And this kid told him, Rabbi, I came to New York to get a bracha, but I also go to the football game for this and this group in the stadium. So the Rebbe smiled and he said, in real life, kid, don't be a fan, be a player. Means you can love this team, hate this team, I don't care when it comes to baseball, football, but in real life, don't be a fan, be a player, be active. Fans are just like fans. And Jews can be fans, just sit there and, standing, clapping their hands or shouting something, but they can be players. Go down there to the field because you're part of the group. You affect the results. That sentence, as a teenager, really changed what I think. I was a fan. I decided to be a player. Not sitting and saying, oh, these Charedim and these Mitnachalim and these extreme crazy people and these Orthodox. I want to be part of the team.
Participate, don't be a spectator.
Be an active Jew. Wow. Be part of join the team.
Okay, active Jew.
It's a brilliant answer. The question, when we think of the shofar, we normally think either of the binding of Isaac and the ram's horn, or we think of the sound of tears. But the Rambam, as has a completely different view. He says the shofar is Uru Yesheni Mishinatchem. It's God's wake-up call, and he talks about Hashochim Ha'emet Be'ev Le'azman, where you lose a sense of what's important and what isn't important. And the shofar is God calling us to say, live for what's important, not for what's urgent. I think all the stuff that we've been reading in our newspapers for the last few weeks and months and years is very urgent, but absolutely and totally unimportant. The difference it's going to make to anything that counts is pretty close to zero. And Judaism is saying live for the things that are important. Celebrating life, consecrating life, writing other people into the book of life. And all of those things with all the mitzvot that make us say, thank you Hashem for giving all these things into my life. So I would say live for what's important, not for what's urgent. And daven hard to Hashem to give us the strength to become the person He needs us to be.
Beautiful thought to end.
Amen.
Thank you, Rabbi Sachs, for your hosting us and sharing your word. Thank you, Sivan. It really has been a pleasure, honor to have two remarkable Jewish leaders at this table. And
thank you, Rabbi Andrew Shaw, Chief of Mizrahi, the head of Mizrahi UK here in Britain. Thank you, the staff here.
And thank us to World Mizrahi for all of this, and also the Yeshiva University, and to all they've been watching from around the world. Thank you for joining us. But I hope it's been a very inspirational prelude to Rosh Hashanah. Wish all of you out there a Shana Tova Matuka.
Shana Tova.
Shana Tova.